Welcome back to another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. It is a Friday, which means DB is here. However, Alan is not. Alan in Jacksonville now. I don't know if anybody saw his picture in response to a friend of the program, Nick Herbig, but he is literally on the beach right now. So Alan enjoying his life before tomorrow, the preseason opener, which, by the way, if you missed yesterday's episode, I said this on there, but the post-game shows will be back tomorrow night, Alan and I. Post-game talking about it. Even though it's preseason, we're still going to do a post-game show. So excited about that for sure. But as I mentioned, DB joining the show on a Friday. How we doing?
We're doing great, man. I mean, we've got preseason overreactions galore on the TL. Mike McDonald sending some wild, funky trap two pressures in the preseason. We got some contract drama. I mean, but more than anything else, like football is back. I'm very excited about that. I'm even excited to watch Shedeur Sanders debut tonight with the Browns. I
think a lot of people are excited to watch.
I'm just so
talking about overreactions.
Oh, it's going to be crazy. Yeah. But I mean, I don't know. Preseason is, I mean, football, I think sometimes like people forget this, like football's supposed to be fun, man. Like football's back. Like we can enjoy this stuff. And I'm excited to watch it. We got a couple games on tonight that I'll be trying to tune in where I can. And then we've got a weekend full of games really. So I'm excited, man. How you doing?
I stayed up super late last night to watch Jalen Milroe. That's always the interesting thing about the preseason is they don't adjust the times, like they just play in that team's time zone. With the Raiders and Seahawks playing at 10 p.m. Yeah, I mean, it gives you something to watch, obviously, late at night. So I do always look forward to that one or two that happen that way. But yes, I stayed up late to watch Jalen Milroe last night. To your point, I think there's just a lot of interesting storylines to watch. When you have like a rookie quarterback class like this past one was, where there's like a bunch of guys taken on days 2 and 3 and not so much on day 1, those guys are going to play in the preseason. I think it makes it, that's where the watchability is. From a Steelers standpoint, that's where we kind of lost that with Will Howard going down and not seeing him. Tomlin left the door open for maybe that third preseason game. I wouldn't hold out hope that it's going to happen, but he left the door open for it to possibly happen. So we'll see. I think for me, some watchability definitely went out. I'm going to watch the games. Like, I'm going to go online and complain about them, of course, like any rational person does. But I would have watched them regardless of if Will Howard was going to be in there or not. But for me, that was something I was really looking forward to. And again, like I don't want to overstate the importance of their, number 3 quarterback missing a couple weeks. But it's a bummer for him. And, this is where he was going to get his game reps. Unless things go drastically wrong in the regular season. So it still does suck. But so he's not going to be a part of it. Let's talk about guys that are going to be just right off the bat here. I know that you've discussed this. You put out an article about it. I'm sure you talked about it on your channel with the video that you just put out kind of previewing this game. But who are you most excited to watch right off the jump here in this preseason opener?
Man, we want to start with the offensive side of the ball first.
Yeah, let's go both.
I think that it's rational to start there just because, the defense has received a lot of praise throughout training camp. It feels like the offense was off to a little bit slower of a start. And there's so many guys that aren't dressing for this game that I think it does open up the door for some of these younger players to get valuable reps and experience. But, there's no player that could really lift the ceiling of this group more than I feel like Troy Fautanu. So, like, for me, that's a brand thing for me, but also it's a legitimate thing that Steelers fans should be watching for sure. I mean, just how does he look athletically? TJ Watt talked about he was trying to give him a bevy of different moves just to get that trust back in the surgically repaired knee. And I think that, how he moves out in space tonight is going to be something I'm watching for too. I would love to see them get the screen game going a little bit. That's been, a real big disaster for quite a while here in Pittsburgh. So just seeing how he looks athletically and, even like on the other side, Broderick Jones, it seems like he's had a couple better practices now that the pads have come on.
It sounds like was better for him.
Was better. So I mean, the Steelers playing 2 young tackles at least probably for the first several drives of the game is going to be something that's kind of important. And then I think the other part of this is Roman Wilson. Just from a confidence perspective, I thought it was really interesting that Rodgers kind of pointed that out. Like, hey, he needs to get out of his own head. I would like to see them like just get him a touch early in the game just to try to boost that confidence. And, we're all kind of anxiously awaiting for like somebody to step up in this receiver room, and no Calvin Austin tonight, no DK. I mean, I assume that he's going to get plenty of reps because he didn't even play in the preseason last year. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
yeah, I was saying I think he might be one of those like tweeners where you could see him with the 1s and 2s. Like I think
they should 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you. You talked about the tackles briefly within there, and I'm super bullish on Troy Fautanu, just like you are. But obviously, we have to see it. Do you think he's kind of been, I don't want to say buried in the headlines in terms of what he's going to look like, but like there's so much focus, obviously, on Broderick, and I think a lot more concern with him. Do you feel like maybe people are overlooking the fact of like how important Troy Fautanu is, just because like everybody's just been so locked in on Broderick's development?
Yeah, I think like it's kind of like a out of sight, out of mind type of thing, right? Like you don't see a guy play for so long, and I think some of it really. I almost feel like Derrick Harmon kind of falls into this category a little bit too. Like the last 2 first round picks maybe haven't generated as much. I don't want to say buzz, like they've had quiet camps or like disappointing camps, but like maybe just not as much attention as we'd anticipate, like a Steelers rookie first round pick receiving. I think it's just because they've had a really splashy offseason, right? Like Aaron Rodgers is
Yeah.
a big name. DK Metcalf is a big name. Jalen Ramsey is a big name. So like we focus so much on the veteran additions. I feel like some of the younger players who honestly, I think, at least in my opinion, are way more important, not just for the short term and the long term viewpoint of this team. So it does bring about some interesting conversations. But the Broderick thing, I think, is just that we've got 2 years of kind of concerning tape. And it's kind of a like Tomlin talks about year 3 being make or break kind of pivotal moments for these young guys and their rookie contracts. And it's kind of like we're at a crossroads. Like with Broderick Jones, it's kind of like put up or shut up time. You know what I'm saying? Like we got to figure out what we've got here. So, but yeah, both guys definitely key pieces to watch tonight. I'm glad they're dressing.
Mentioned Harmon within there. I'm super happy that he was able to get cleared and go for this one.
For sure.
Middle of the week, there was a lot of concern whether that was going to be the case. And man, I mentioned the watchability thing after losing Will Howard. Like, yeah, it would have been, man, obviously Caleb Johnson. I'm excited to see him. Jack Sawyer. I think you look at the rookie class first and foremost when you talk about like their first preseason action and wanting to watch. But yeah, Derrick Harmon would have been a big part of that. So if he wasn't able to go, that would have really sucked. So I would throw him into that same bucket. Just trying to think of like different names that you didn't mention there. This is a super cliche one. There's always a receiver that pops in the preseason stuff. I know Brock Taylor's been the guy that everybody's talking about, but as we get deeper into the game, I threw this out there in the afternoon drive as well. I think Keyshawn Williams might be a guy to watch when we get into like the third team, like deeper in the game. He's making a lot of plays with third team. Obviously I was only out there one night, but he made like 3 different plays in team period at that point. And just like hearing, obviously talking to Allen every single day, certainly seems like he's been a guy when the third team is out there that's made some plays. And then like defensively, kind of in that same boat, Cameron McCutcheon's been a guy like deeper down the roster as well in the depth chart. Again, I'm not saying that either of these guys are going to make the 53-man roster, but like practice squad, certainly. And with the way injuries go in the NFL, they could be called upon at some point when depth gets tested. So he's a guy that later in the game, I'm looking forward to watching for those sickos that are going to watch all 4 quarters regardless.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I know we'll both be there. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I'm really excited about that. I think, with McCutcheon, he's a guy who has the body type that the Steelers have kind of gravitated more towards in recent years, just like those bigger, longer corners and things like that. And another corner that I would throw out there is like Deshaun Jameson. Like he's been a guy who kind of caught my eye a couple times. Jameson was a guy that I watched quite a bit at Texas.
Corner, or like what have they even been doing with him?
A lot of the reps I saw were outside in team period, or inside, excuse me, in team period. But I mean, he was kind of catching my eye a little bit in like 1-on-1, 2-on-2 type drills too, just like near the ball. I mean, he was a guy I remember scouting him coming out of Texas, just like undersized corner, but really twitchy, has good feet. Thought his technique was pretty good. Obviously, being like, I think they list him at like 5'9". He's a smaller dude. So, I mean, there are some definite limitations there, but he's been in the league a couple years now. Just, again, you talking about like guys that could potentially make the practice squad. You mentioned Rock Taylor. Just, want to see some consistency. And again, like with a lot of these receivers, no Calvin, no DK, you're going to see more reps for guys like Rock Taylor. I would also throw Brandon Johnson in there. So to me, just one of the big takeaways I had coming home from camp is like this team really desperately needs a wide receiver too. And I don't anticipate my feelings on that changing just based on the preseason. But at the same time, there's a lot of playing time to be had here for somebody to come in and like have a strong preseason and carve out, reps for themselves and climb the depth chart. And I think that those 2 guys, at least Johnson and Taylor, both those guys are, bigger receivers, could potentially profile as guys that could play on the outside and maybe help them. I just don't think that Robert Woods has very much, if anything, left athletically, man. And like, that's kind of a disappointing thing. And I understand the value that he could bring as like a veteran presence, somebody that can block and just been around the block, can share valuable stuff with the receiver core, but that only gets you so far, man. It's just hard when you're not a guy that you really want out there on offense anymore, and he doesn't really contribute on special teams beyond like having returner capability, but not somebody you really want back there. It's just it's interesting.
I'm not saying that I would have wanted him to be on the roster last year, but I
Mm-hmm.
think it would have, like, for him, he would have had more of an opportunity to make an impact last year, because the top dog this year in DK actually can and is willing to block, unlike George last year. So, like, you saw those reps in 13 personnel would go to a guy like Scotty Miller. And not to take anything away from him, but like DK can stay on the field in those situations this year. So I think that's, just kind of looking at the math and doing it like for the wide receiver room. It'll be interesting to see if a vet like, and I just mentioned Scotty Miller, he'd be running with the ones. I mean, he's had a very good training camp, certainly not trying to take away from that, but I think that speaks in two different ways, right? Like, it speaks to how good of a training camp Scotty Miller's having, but also the fact that that room is just not very good.
Yeah. I mean, if he's
for lack of a better word.
Yeah, and like with Roman having a good past couple of days, that's certainly encouraging. Hopefully he can continue that momentum into the preseason. But like if a guy like Scotty Miller, again, no disrespect, but if he was clearly like the number 2 wide receiver or the second best wide receiver through camp through the first week and a half, it's a little bit concerning and kind of indicative of like where the room is at in totality. So yeah, I mean, I just want to see another thing that I kind of mentioned in the video that I did for my channel. It's just like a clean operation game wise, like last year's preseason, and it's the first game of the season, so it's not going to be perfect, right? But like, you don't want to see a bunch of penalties. You don't want to see a bunch of like botched snaps, high snaps, like QC exchanges going awry. Like, you don't want to see that stuff just because you want to get valuable reps. Like, you want to stay in good down and distance to make sure you can work through your game script and just like get reps that you can actually evaluate these guys on. Like, if you're in 3rd and 15 in the preseason, it's just, you might as well punt on 3rd down. You know what I'm saying? So, I just think that's something that I want to see. But yeah, I mean, I do wish Will Howard was playing just from a watchability standpoint, because I think we know, like, Mason to me is almost like
he's probably gonna light it up.
Yeah, dude, he's almost become I'm not a baseball guy, but I've heard this reference from like friends that I have that love baseball. It's like he almost seems like a 4A guy who like will light it up in the like he can light up like the minors, but then like when it comes time to like, you don't really necessarily want him out there with the starters, right? But like in a preseason setting like this, what he's going to go out there and do. Like he's going to run the operation. Like I've had full faith in it. Even in the short term, if he does have to play for the Steelers this year, I have confidence that he could do that in short spurts. But I'll be honest with you. I have like negative interest in watching Skylar Thompson play football. Like, I've seen Skylar Thompson play. I don't want to necessarily see him play more, but I will be locked in for fourth quarters regardless. But yeah, not super excited.
It's going to be about the other guys. I think obviously, like when it gets to that point as well, even the running backs that are further down. You have a guy like Trey Sermon on the roster, which I think is going to be interesting to see. How he looks in this setting and everything like that. Fresh start for him, and is he really going to force their hand to carry another running back? I feel like at the very least he'll be the practice squad guy and see if they can keep him there. But yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued by all avenues of that this looks like. And honestly, from like we keep talking about watchability standpoint and just like how we're watching even other teams' games and stuff like that. Part of that is the fact that I still think that we need a receiver. And I'm just like watching these other games thinking, is there a guy further down the depth chart that comes in and plays like in the second half of these games that I'm intrigued by, that I'm like, hey, maybe that's a guy worth taking a flyer on. So that's certainly part of the equation for me, at least, as well.
No, completely agree. I mean, it's a good thing to kind of keep in mind, like once the second half of these other preseason games on, I feel like from a fan perspective, I mean, that's what NFL teams are doing, right? They're combing what these cuts could be like and, trying to have like some of their like pro scouts, like watching some of this film and trying to evaluate guys maybe that they liked during the draft process a couple of years ago that are maybe on the chopping block or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I definitely am excited about that. I do think that there could definitely be like an outside addition. Like we've already seen one. I thought tackle was a spot they may address like earlier in the offseason. They ended up bringing in a tackle this week, excuse me. But receivers one, I could see an addition. And obviously the big thing too with the preseason is just like praying for no injuries. I mean, that's like half the battle in and of itself, right? Like we've already seen some really key injuries. We just saw Rashawn Slater down for the season. We've already seen a couple of just like brutal injuries like that. So the biggest thing, I guess, above everything else we've talked about for the first like 15, 20 minutes of the show is just stay healthy, no key injuries, especially to any of their like starting caliber contributors.
And, a good thing Slater got his bag already too shortly before that injury happened. And wonder how much that could have potentially changed the conversation, or if he would have had to wait longer. But I have a question for you just regarding preseason in general. We talked about how, Mike McDonald did a little bit something that you really don't see do in the preseason. Like, this is why Aaron Rodgers said he actually finds more value in a joint practice in the preseason, because teams typically don't do the stuff that McDonald did. So for you, what can you and how do you really evaluate watching the preseason reps? I just think it's interesting because it's so vanilla, and like when you go back and watch the tape, what is it that you are actually looking for, and what can you actually pull away that you feel like is meaningful?
I think that being assignment sound, like from a run defense perspective, like you want to see guys in the right gaps, right? Like you don't want a bunch of balls flying over guys' heads. Like even if you are, the Steelers could go out there and these next 3 games, they could play cover 3 on a 50% rate and it wouldn't even surprise me. You know what I'm saying? But you still have like, if you're the hook curl player, you still got your landmarks, right? Like you need to get to the hash, like you need to, melt towards the quarterback's eyes. Like you want to see that kind of stuff. And then from a tackling standpoint too, that's always something that I want to see, just because the Steelers do tackle more than most. But man, like I always feel like in September, I would love to see the data behind it. But I feel like the missed tackle rate in September football is always like so bad, just because it just
for anybody. You mean
for anybody? Yeah, for anybody. So I mean, just being assignment sound, I think is one thing. And then I always think that there's like little tidbits you can pick up on from like personnel usage, like maybe how they're matching, like are they staying in? I doubt they do it tonight just because, Ramsey and those guys aren't playing, but like, will they match, 12 with nickel from an offensive perspective? Like how much like 12 and 13 personnel do we see? Like, do we see, I'm also kind of looking for, last year it was like trying to pick up, what Arthur Smith concepts have kind of made their way to Pittsburgh. But I'm also trying to figure out like this year, what Aaron Rodgers stuff that I've watched, over the past year with the Jets, and even I went back a couple years ago and watched all of the 2022 Packers film, just seeing like what stuff has like migrated its way to the playoff or to the Steelers offense. So that kind of stuff I think is interesting, but you are right. It is vanilla for the most part. Some coordinators are definitely getting a little more crazy than others, but I thought Rodgers' point about the joint practices is a valid one. And another reason that you don't see as much like crazy sicko stuff in the preseason is because everybody's got the tape. But like when you go back, you don't want to give anything away to the teams on your schedule. But for the joint practices, the only people that's going to have access to that tape are the 2 teams playing. So if you're doing a joint practice with a team that's not even on your schedule, you can try some stuff out that you maybe want to see against like your week 1 opponent, and that's just different. So that's like what Rodgers is saying. Like he probably finds more value in that, even though the preseason is definitely different because like you're not game planning up against like certain protections, or like you're not evaluating all these different tendencies based on down and distance and personnel usage like that. But there is still good things to be found, and I just think a lot of it just boils down to like assignment soundness and fundamentals.
You said this earlier, and I thought maybe you just had a slip, but you just said it a second time, and I want to make sure that you don't turn on your TV tonight expecting to watch the Steelers. You're aware that they play tomorrow.
Did I say tonight again?
You actually said it multiple times. I just want to make sure that you're.
Maybe I'm just like super, super excited, or maybe it's the fact that I've only had like 3 hours of sleep that I haven't been able to, I guess, digest what day of the week it is. It is Friday, right? Okay, yeah.
You're on here, so it's Friday.
Okay, that's good.
This should be how you keep track of days. But anyways, I was like, I don't know because sometimes like for around the 412, we have to be cognizant that we're recording the day before we put the episode out. So we'll say true, tonight, and I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that it is currently the 8th. They play on the 9th, just for anybody watching or listening to this, so they're not thrown off. But we brought up earlier, obviously things to look forward to. I think one thing that's hard though is just like schematically things that they're going to want to do that, like you're saying, they're not going to put on tape. And I think a big part of that is like, where's Jalen Ramsey going to be on the field playing? And we got a good question here from KPB on Twitter, KPB19 on Twitter. Actually, he asked me 3 different questions, but we'll start with this one. Can you explain what changed in the NFL that led to the nickel position's rise in value to the point where it seems to be valued over the safety position?
Man, that is a good question. This is something I've honestly been wanting to like do like a deep dive write up or video on. I've just never really gotten around to it. But in short, I just personally, and I've thought this for a long time, I think playing the nickel spot from a coverage standpoint is a lot more difficult because you don't have the sideline as your friend like you do
Mm,
on the boundary. You get a
yeah.
lot of two-way goes, so like guys can go, well, really three-way goes. Like guys can go vertical from the slot. They can also break outside and inside. Where it's like a difference if you're out there playing cornerback on the boundary, you get an outside release. The only really thing that you can expect is like he can run a fade or he can run a comeback. Like you're not gonna get an outbreaker when a guy's lined up outside the number. So it's like it's different. I think it's more difficult to defend in the slot. You've seen a really big rise in terms of like the deployment of alpha wide receivers. Like AJ Brown is like really one of the last of like a dying breed, in my opinion, in terms of like true X receivers that really stay on the backside of trips or they're out wide like 80-90% of the time.
Yeah,
Like
they don't even like
Jamar,
matchup one. He's just like, I'm gonna be right here.
yeah, you
Come
can come
take
to
me.
me. Yeah. But like you look at like Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, guys that will get floated inside. So like having a nickel defender that you trust in those type of coverage responsibilities where you're playing man, whether you're playing zone, whether you're playing press, off coverage is really crucial. And then also like your nickel defender has to be able to fit the run. So
Yeah,
having the ability, I mean, as a nickel player, like if you really have a guy that you trust in man coverage that can fit the run and can blitz, like it is the ultimate kind of like skeleton key in like the modern NFL. And like with everything that all of these defensive coordinators are trying to do with like the sim pressures, the creepers, different things like that, it just unlocks your defense and it allows you to be like really versatile. So I think that the safety position, it hasn't seen as much of an uptick just because I just don't think that it carries as much value, at least in the modern game, with the way that we're playing football right now with the two high structures and things like that. But that's a
mhm,
long-winded answer. It's really not even all that I really want to say about that. But I just think
yeah,
it's a difficult position to play. And if you have like a dude, I really think that you look around at a lot of the best defenses in the NFL right now, or at least over the past couple of years. You look at the Texans, they have Jalen Petrie. You look at the Lions, they have Brian Branch. You look at the Ravens, they've got Kyle Hamilton. Even though some of those guys have floated back to safety, they give you that interchangeability to do things on the back end that you wouldn't be able to do. So I think that's where my optimism for the Steelers comes in, like having a guy like Ramsey, because we know Ramsey's like one of the most physical defensive backs in the league. He's
mhm.
also a guy who's followed and shadowed opposing teams' top receiving threats over the course of his career. And like we got a little bit of a glimpse of him as a blitzer last year in Anthony Weaver's scheme, which I'm really excited about. So I just
Mhm.
want more versatility on the back end for the Steelers defense. And I'm hopeful that, his addition kind of brings that.
12 pressures last year for Jalen Ramsey. So yeah,
On like
certainly.
what, like 50 on like 40 rushes, right?
Yeah, so I think that that's
So
something
yeah.
that they can definitely tap back into. Something that, I mean, I would say haven't really seen a ton since Hilton. I know that like every once in a while, right, like Art Millette or something would do it,
Hmm.
Shandon Sullivan, but like yeah, they haven't been able to really do it to a high degree. And I think it was more about the personnel than it was just like them wanting to be that basic
Hmm.
with it.
Yeah.
But the thing I wanted to mention that you mentioned within there honestly was like the man coverage aspect of it. And the thing is, like, there's safeties that play in that nickel spot for sure. But if you're talking about like just a box safety or just like a deep safety, then that's where it's like, yeah, how much value does that really hold? And that's why we had the whole conversation pre and post trade of Minka Fitzpatrick
Hmm.
with what they were asking him to do. What was the value of that? Now you could say that's more in the Steelers than it was Minka, but regardless, with what was being brought to the table for one reason or another, it
Yep.
was worth a price tag at that point. So, good question from KPB. And again, probably not all that we dive into in terms of that. The other thing that he asked here that I wanted to get into is what are the chances you think the Steelers could use their depth along at the edge at some point to move up in next year's draft? So obviously people have talked about the idea of trading Highsmith now or trading Herbig before obviously he would need a second contract or anything like that. Sawyer's a rookie and TJ just got paid. So I really feel like it's about those other two in the middle
Right.
that I mentioned, whether it's Highsmith or Herbig.
Hmm.
Do you think that that's a possibility at all? I think that that's never a position where you want to really deplete, regardless of the dudes that you have there. But what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, to be completely honest with you, man, I am actually really surprised that I mean, or maybe this has been floated to the Steelers front office and it just hasn't made its way to the media. But I cannot for the life of me understand why as soon as TJ signed that extension, why teams would not be like blowing up Omar Khan's phone for Nick Herbig just to see what the price is, knowing that the Steelers are going to be desperate for a quarterback next year, and they probably don't have any incentive. Like I personally would not trade Herbig right now just because
Well,
he's
I
got
tell you,
2
there's
years.
definitely a team that asked about him last year, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did again. I didn't hear anything this year,
Yeah.
but I know for sure a team asked about him last year.
Yeah, for me, like I've said this multiple times, but I think if Herbig was a guy that got starting snaps, like 75% of the reps on pretty much any team, that would allow him to be like a wide nine rusher. He's a double-digit sack guy, guaranteed. And that is incredibly valuable. So, like, what a guy like that would go for on the open market. I mean, look at some of these like edge contracts recently, not just like the established guys that we see, but even guys that like reach free agency, like they get crazy bags. And I think Herbig's on his way to getting there as well. In terms of like what I trade, like to me, Herbig is a guy going into his 3rd year. I just think he's so dynamic that I wouldn't want to trade him, but it's hard. Like when you don't have a franchise quarterback, I just don't think that there are really there's a such thing as like an untradeable player. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like you've got to do whatever you possibly can to put yourself in position to get that guy, because that's ultimately the best chance that you have at turning like your franchise around and really getting to where you want to go in the postseason. So I don't want to say like I wouldn't trade him under any circumstance, but man, like I'd have to be like really, really confident in my evaluation of a player like trading up like that. But I mean, I'm sure that this is going to be a big talking point next year, depending on how the season goes for like Herbig, for Highsmith. But I guess we'll wait and see for right now. But as far as like would I make that trade before the season? No. Maybe if like the Steelers weren't, like maybe if things weren't going good by the trade deadline. I mean, all these like contending teams, they're always like trying to make moves for like a pass rusher. I know Detroit went out and traded for Zadarius Smith last year at the deadline. Could that situation come up where like maybe the Steelers are like below 500 at the deadline and like somebody offers a 3rd round pick for Herbig? I mean, I think you'd have to consider it at that point, but yeah, man, I don't want to lose that guy. I really don't.
Yeah. And I don't think it'd be team driven whatsoever. I think it would be him realizing like it's not going to happen here. Like the role that I want to be in probably is not going to happen here. So I'm going to have to go somewhere else, and it'd be, allowing him to do so. But yeah, I don't think the team would have a desire necessarily. It's certainly not right now. Like you're saying, if he ends up having to be part of a package to move up substantially to be able to get your quarterback, and he's the player that's included as part of that, I'm not like turning my nose up to that. Cause like you're saying, that kind of has to happen when it comes to that position. So,
yeah, I mean, like one of the comparisons that I think you could like really use is a guy like Bryce Huff, like the contract that he got with the Eagles. Obviously things didn't work out like Philly or he expected, but like he was another one of those guys that was primarily a wide nine rusher, wins, really with the quick first step, bendy, can threaten the outside corner. And like he went out, and what was the contract that they gave him? They gave him like $51 million, like 17, 18 million a year. That was a couple of years ago with a different salary cap number. So I mean, that kind of gives you the ballpark of what a guy like Herbig, I feel like, would get if he was just made available on the open market. Now, would a team trade you a draft pick just to give him that type of extension? I mean, I think if he comes out this year and does what I expect him to do, I think that's definitely the case. But I think the biggest thing that, I'm looking forward to seeing this year, and I'm hoping they actually adhere to it, is just being able to give, Highsmith's already banged up, but like try to give these guys a little bit of a break. Like we don't necessarily need to see Watt and Highsmith playing 87, 88% of the snaps every week. Like, can we get that number below, like between 75 and 80, and allow the young pups to play? Especially, if you're later in the season and gotta have it moments, 3rd down, stuff like that. I understand those guys are gonna want to be on the field, but there's no reason to play those guys 85, 88% of the snaps in September, in a NFC game, in my opinion. So
real quick before we get out of here, I feel like I gotta get your perspective and put you on the spot. Obviously I don't want to talk too much about the Cam Heyward and Chris Boswell situation. Everybody's kind of run that thing through the ringer. But I wanted your perspective on this just because I saw you put out a tweet about like the social media aspect side of it, and it becoming like your old man yells at cloud thing for players when they do that. despite the fact that you were a very pro player. But was that the only portion of this whole saga that you're taking issue with, or like even just the contract portion of it as well?
Yeah, I think like the cryptic tweets, the cryptic Instagram thing, like I said, I just think it feels like very like middle school vibes to me. And there's a lot of things that rubs me the wrong way about like Twitter usage. I'm sure like people have probably realized this by now, but like I really don't tweet nearly as much as I do or as much as I used to in years past. That will change like when the Steelers are like on and stuff like that. And there's like more for me to talk about. But it's just kind of exhausting, man. Like, I don't even think it's necessarily like the nonstop contract talks. I think that's just a part of the business and a part of analyzing the sport. I just think that the social media stuff and the way that we kind of overanalyze all of this different stuff is just, it just feels very childish to me. But in terms of like Cam's contract, I mean, I understand it from both parties, right? Like Cam went out there, he had a heck of a year. Like I thought he was definitely in all pro category. I thought he was the best Steelers defender. I thought he deserved to be first team all pro. At the same time, I understand it from the team's perspective too, because they didn't necessarily like force his hand and like tie his hands behind his back and make him sign that contract coming off the worst year of his one of the worst years of his career, right? Like, so he didn't have to sign that extension last year. And I'm sure the Steelers are looking at it like, we've got a really good deal here from a value perspective. He's 36 years old. They want to caution themselves with that. So that's
Yeah,
kind of
I just feel like with the way that they did that contract last year, both parties knew if he had the season that he did, this would happen. Like if you're going to pay out the guaranteed money the way that they did and have none of it still left on the table, that I feel like they had to know that this was going to end up coming down the pipeline. I'm curious as to what they thought was going to happen, like from their perspective. And maybe they did because like things were completely quiet up to this point. Nobody would have batted an eye if this didn't get leaked. Just because Cam and Chris aren't going to do anything at training camp anyway. So regardless of their participation, I don't think anybody would have been batting an eye if this didn't leak, and it would just been business as usual. It probably would have came out like a week before the season that they're both getting pay raise in 2025, like I expect to have happen, and that would have been that.
And I think that's the thing too, is like I think from a team perspective, the situation that the Steelers are going to run themselves into is like it's a precedent type thing. Like, do you want to start? Because once you do it for somebody, that opens up the door for everybody and their agent to try to walk through that door. Now, there are certain players that you obviously will make special exceptions to, like they don't really negotiate with players like 2 years left on their deal. Like the one exception to that was like Roethlisberger, right? But like he's a franchise quarterback. Like pretty much those types
they
of
did do something weird with ABs as well.
Right. They move money up.
Crazy. Yeah.
And that's what I think that they should try to do here with Heyward, in my opinion. Like adding years to the deal, like I just don't see like why the team would want to do that with him his age. And I don't even know if like Cam, like how much longer does he even really want to play?
I can't imagine you'd want that.
Yeah, I mean, so like it's really just a matter of like, could you move some money up from next year to this year? They've got the salary cap space to be able to afford that. Could you give him a little bit of a pay bump? Like they even gave Ramsey a little bit of a pay bump to facilitate that trade. I think it was like 1.2 million or something like that. But, you know, could you give Cam, I mean, I don't know what the number is, but like to me, if you would go to Heyward and say like, hey, like we're going to give you a $3 to $4 million raise. We're going to make you like a top 15-ish interior defensive lineman for this year. Do it again next year. We'll revisit the contract and we'll go from there. You know what I'm saying? And like, I think that that's probably fair. If it gets to the point where it's like more than that, I think that you're going to run into like more of a pushback from the team. Now, I don't have any inside information. I don't know. I really don't know. And to be honest with you, I don't know how much I really care. Like Cam's been taken care of by the team. They're going to take care of him. They'll work something out. Cam's a Steeler for life. He's made a ton of money.
That's kind of the point. That's kind of the point that I was saying there, where it's like, you know, if this didn't get put out there at all, they would have just done the business as usual, and we would have gotten to like a week before the season. Their contracts would have been adjusted. No peep made by anybody on the negative side. It just, you know, I don't know. Again, going back to what we said before, you start to think about which party has more to gain here, something like this leaks and everything like that. And obviously Cam didn't want to talk after practice yesterday. I don't know. I'm just like you. I get tired of the social media aspect of things, but certainly don't have an issue with him feeling like he wants to rework his contract coming off the year that he had no guaranteed money left.
And I think that's the thing too, is like there's like I always see like this stuff every time social media is just like with contracts and stuff. It's just kind of gotten to the point where it's like wild from all angles. But I keep seeing like people are saying like, oh, like why does anybody care about the contract stuff? It's not money that's coming out of your pocket. And like to an extent, like, yeah, it's not coming out of my pocket, but like if you're like a football fan, don't we all kind of care about like the roster construction element of the team? Like, don't we spend? I mean, you guys are doing you guys are doing a podcast 5 days a week in May when there's absolutely nothing going on. Like, if you're listening to NFL or Steelers content from January to September, you obviously have some type of care about roster construction. I mean, the salary cap is kind of like a big deal when it comes to roster construction. So like there's so many things that I just see on social media that just like make me kind of like shake my head a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I have no problem with Cam like wanting to try to get him a raise. I understand the Steelers position too. I trust that it'll get worked out. They're probably going to try to give him a little bit of a raise or like move some money up or something like that. I totally get it. I don't know. My other thing that I was kind of frustrated with the whole, like just the timing of like, you know, the Instagram story and then like, you know, obviously the stuff going to Schefter and like getting put out. It's like, it just kind of sucks because like, you know, obviously I'm really excited about the Steelers playing tomorrow that I keep saying that they're playing tonight. So it just kind of sucks that like we've spent the last 24 hours talking about this instead of like football being back. And I'm just like,
when there was very little drama throughout the first, you know, once they got TJ's contract taken care of, we thought it was just smooth sailing to the regular season. So,
and like to the point, like what spawned that tweet last thing, what spawned the tweet is like someone literally screenshotted Cam's Instagram story and DM'd it to me. It was like, hey, did you see this? And I'm just like, dude, like, I don't want to talk about this. I want to talk about football. Like, I don't want to talk about Instagram. I'm not even active on my own Instagram. So yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's frustrating to me.
All right. Well, we said 5:40. It's 5:41. Close enough. DB, before we get out of here, as always, tell the people that you find you.
Yep, at Steelers_DB on Twitter and on YouTube. You can find our written work at Steelers.com. And yeah, Steelers have a game this weekend. I'm really excited about it.
There we go. Be sure to sign up for SN Plus if you have not already. $4 a month.
Thanks.
Get you all the best stuff from DB, Allen, the entire crew, as well as being able to be involved in the SN Plus subscribers only live streams. So very excited about that. Still haven't figured out exactly when that's going to happen. I know Allen's trying to gauge what the audience wants in terms of setting that up. Like, do we want it right before right after the preseason, like to recap everything that happened, or so we'll see when that's going to be. But if you sign up for SN Plus, you hit that notification bell, stay up to date with everything that's going on. You will know. Speaking of notifications, be sure to hit that down below here on the YouTube as well. That's totally free to subscribe, like all that good stuff. It's currently sitting at 16,371. Who's a 71 in Steelers history? Joe Haig. There we go. 71.
Oh God. What a legend.
Yeah. Who's another one? Oh, the other Herbig, Nate Herbig, would have worn 71 as well. So there we go. That's where we sit. That's totally free again to do so. Also, leave us a 5-star review and subscribe if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever your podcast from. We appreciate that. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. Do the same thing on TikTok, and then you'll find me everywhere. Zachary Smith, PGH. For Derrick Bell, myself, thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.